Hello, and welcome back to the Wait Until My Hair Grows Out podcast. This is a few minutes late because some lady was using the room I was using. She went over trying to make some cash, teaching a poor kid that has a learning problem. I'm happy to be flexible. I talked to the very nice man about the room and used another one. So here I am. And just again, in case you forgot, the name of this podcast was named after what my mother said. She figured she'd be dead this year because of my father's veiled threats, and since he raped her and me, and said I couldn't even think about it until I turned 50. And she said when I go back to El Cajon to litigate and to speak to witnesses, to make sure that my hair is grown out because she likes my hair. My dad disagreed with a lot of things she said and thought and felt, and including my hair. And I shaved it not too long ago, but I've always had long hair, longish hair, not like down my butt or whatever. But yeah. And this podcast may seem simple or whatever, but I'm recording live on Instagram and it's being carried over to Facebook, and so it'll be saved in both locations. I'm also recording it on another iPad, and it's going to be uploaded to YouTube. And then I'm also recording the audio, and that will be uploaded to Dropbox. So rest assured, if you don't catch it live or want to catch it later, you can. So now I'm going to start this by saying I spoke last week to Detective Yako in El Cajon, which was a great opportunity, and I was very thankful. Officer A. Vigil, whose name is pronounced Vigil, is off on a training exercise for a couple of weeks. So this detective wanted to meet me, take my statement, and see some of the marks on my body. So I was very, very happy to go to El Cajon Police Station and speak to him. And you can hear that on my website and on Dropbox as well. I just uploaded it to the same folder as the audio of this podcast. So, and then also afterwards, I emailed him some pictures and some more information, but I told him more than I told the initial cop, Officer Rimple, back in April, just because he was more attentive and I felt more comfortable and like I had more time to speak to him. So again, I'm very thankful for him. Oh, and the funny thing is, and he got a crack, he laughed really hard when I told him this, so I hope you think it's funny too, but I got a phone message from him wanting to schedule the appointment, the meeting for the statement, and Google Voice translated his name as Yahoo. Like a Yahoo, like a nut or something. So when I called up for him, I had to actually listen to the voicemail because the transcript was so bad and I knew his name wasn't Yahoo. So it was Yako. Anyhow, be that as it may, I'm still sending letters out and I'm still recalling painful memories and conversations that I had never thought of for decades because I was told I couldn't even think about them or else my parents would split up and God would be angry and the next man would do even worse things to me than my father did, he said. But be that as it may, I have vacated my apartment in Portland, relocated to El Cajon. I've got a job interview tomorrow and a dentist appointment. So things are rolling. I wrote 6 poems yesterday. I'm still the most prolific poet alive as far as I know by number of poems. I've written 2,651 poems, published in 36 books, and I'm working on my 37th book. I've written all these poems since 2012. So back when I was at San Diego State University earning a BA in psychology, I got an English minor as well and took creative writing, which helped my poetry. But what really helped it was when I took poetry and creative writing classes up in Long Beach City College in 2012, 2013, 2014, and studied journalism. I went full-time, earned over a 3.0, and it was kind of the yin and yang of writing, journalism and creative writing. Because journalism wants you to follow AP style and be succinct. I wrote for the Viking newspaper, and I was one of the editors as well. In fact, the editor-in-chief, his name was Jesus. So it was always like, I don't know, let's run it by Jesus and see. Is this gonna work? I don't know, let's just run it by Jesus. Something that you Christians may relate to. Let's run it by Jesus first. But I'm stoked on tomorrow. I've got a great job opportunity I'll tell you more about later. And the dentist. You know, I kind of changed my diet because last time I was here, I just remembered the dentist's name. I was trying to think about it. His name is Ben Mandel. Don't see him. He's terrible. I saw Mandel, and I don't know if he's Jewish or if he's Arab or none of the above, and I don't really care. But I had a hole in my tooth from childhood. I had one cavity and only one cavity, and I've had it filled a few times over the years. And when I was in Hawaii living there, they filled it with a silver filling, and I think they might have cracked it by accident. But I had white filling composite before, and he put in I was hoping that he could get all the silver out a few years ago and start over from scratch and then go for some white composite if I didn't like it or want an extraction. But he put in a temporary filling and it fell out. It wore out within like a month or two. And so for the last couple of years, I've just been winging it, basically. I changed my diet. But if you know anything about me, I've fasted many, many times for weeks and weeks and months of my life. In fact, I think I'd be a real big obese person right now if I never fasted. Because, you know, my arms are 6'3" from fingertip to fingertip. My height is 5'10". My lungs take 2 pictures at the hospital to get inside of their camera. My dong is 8 feet long. Well, maybe not 8 feet long. But let's just suffice it to say I've got some oversized body parts, so it's difficult to determine how much I'm supposed to eat and how much I need, and I feel like I need more than I need. I've always felt that way. I've always felt like I need to overeat a little bit. So for me, eating like I feel like for 6 days and fasting for 1 day would probably be perfect, but I don't really do that. I try to eat the right amount. In fact, I've even journaled. I have food journals where I write down how much I have eaten every day. And I always do that until it becomes kind of a memory thing and I just kind of go ballpark it. Because I don't want it to be fat, you know. My mother was obese and her mom was obese and my father is obese and my mother needed a knee replacement. And it really slowed her down and hurt her a lot and she got an infection. And it just, you know, it made me realize that, you know, the body is not meant to be overweight. And if you're going to have an overweight body, then you run the risk of damaging your ankles, your knees, your joints. And they're not going to last your whole life if you put too much pressure and weight on them. Yeah. I remember when I was a kid, I heard that it's either, if you have an injury, it's usually from misuse or disuse, more times than not, unless you're born with it or something. But I think there's some truth to that, you know, when you see people in society that have injuries long-term or limping or with a cast or a cane or just whatever, you know, it's generally because they didn't use that body part for so long, or because they misused it. Of course, you can just be hit by a car as well or something, but in general, I don't want to misuse my body, and I'm not going to leave it to disuse either. I've been walking lots of miles every day and thinking about buying a bicycle. Some of these people have these little motor scooters that are kind of fun looking. I saw one at Walmart yesterday for $300, but it said it had a 13-mile range is all. And I thought, whoa, I don't know if I just want to go 13 miles and then charge it every time. I have a friend who has one and says that his goes about 30 miles, and they look the same, so some of them have to have longer ranges. And when I say scooter, I just mean basically it looks like an old school scooter, but it's electrified. So you just stand on it, hold the bars, and gas it, and it goes. In fact, he rode right past me today, and I saw him, and now I see him, he's over there. It's my buddy named Q, or Quentin, which is cool because I had a roommate. I've only had one black roommate, and his name was Quentin, and we called him Q. When I went to San Diego State University, he lived with me. He was a basketball player at Christian Heritage College. I'm just sipping water to keep my voice good and strong. Today I've had a cup of organic coffee and a cup of organic peppermint tea. It was great. And I've got a lot to do today, so I'm probably gonna have some more later. Well, is it okay if I wish you happy Father's Day? Even though it was yesterday, even though it's kind of a corporate Hallmark holiday? Sure, why not? Happy Father's Day. I hope you had a good time yesterday. Told your father. Okay, I will. I'll put it back when I'm done.
Yeah, it has to be now.
I'm broadcasting. It's always good to have a little bit of an angle when you broadcast. So the last couple of weeks, I've used an empty, clean trash can upside down to put one of my iPads on, so it's at a good angle. The other angle's here, and it's flat, and it's not. It's like, woo, almost looking up at me. I don't like people looking up my nose, you know? So I think I just got warned. I might be busted here. I hope they can have some grace or some mercy, and I'll figure something out next time. I was trying to put it in my backpack, but my backpack is kind of mushy and lower, and it goes, and it turns and stuff. So this is pretty good, but maybe there's another way if this is blasphemy. So I've been self-employed for many, many years, like my family taught me to be, like my father was. And I've enjoyed it. It takes a certain kind of person to be self-employed because, you know, it's feast or famine sometimes. Years back when I was hosting lots of websites, I was making great money, but I was up for hours and hours, all days and nights and on call, and that was rough. And then probably my guitar lesson teaching business was one of my favorites. And I still teach guitar lessons. If you want to learn how to play the guitar, let me know. It's great fun. And my students learn fast. And I've taught students of all skill levels and ages. And even a couple of years ago, I brought it online. When I went back east to visit my great Aunt Dixie's tomb after she died, I decided I had to spend some time there. I needed therapy before I could see it. And I was a wreck. And also because of my cousin, who sexually abused me when I was 16 and we visited North Carolina. I got a restraining order from her before I even saw the tomb because she threatened me with some veiled threats about authority and police, if I ever said anything and this and that, and how she knew the cops around there and stuff. So, and I'm a law-abiding citizen. I don't have warrants. You know, I'm a good person. And, you know, but it was pretty pathetic because my father lied to her. My mom was dead at the time. She died in 2017. I figured my father would be the witness that would be honest and it would be a drop in the bucket, and he flat out lied to law enforcement, like the piece of shit he is. So now there's another witness actually that'll be just as good. And I just got a card in the mail that said my case has been recalendared. Let me explain what happened. Because I was emailing a man named Bobby Jenkins at Lanier Law Group for 5 years. Because what happened was in North Carolina, there's something called the Safe Child Act that allowed victims of sex crimes to litigate in a 2-year look-back window, but it was challenged by the Catholic Church and other child molesting type of people because they didn't want to be held accountable. And so I went through their system, and it was ruled unconstitutional, and so it had to be appealed in Durham, North Carolina. And so Bobby's been telling me through email for 5 years, the blow by blow, what's going on, and finally he won. I'm so proud of the guy, he won. So I talked to them yesterday. I talked to the intake attorney processor named Angel, and she was very, very nice, Southern woman there in North Carolina, and I told her the painful story about what happened to me. And now, since he won, we have a 2-year look-back window again to litigate. And so now I've got kind of like a couple irons in the fire, so to speak, since I'm in El Cajon, talking to law enforcement about my father's criminality and preparing to file civil lawsuits against him for his rapes and assaults. I was ready to go on the day of the trial in Wilkesboro. I had my grip of papers and my witnesses, and I was ready to go, and they said that they couldn't, and they didn't dismiss it, but they set it aside until it could be recalendared, and now it was. So, to make a long story longer, Mr. Jenkins may take my case, which would be awesome. And if he doesn't, then fine, then I could do it myself. But she shouldn't have done what she did, and it caused me a lot of problems. It pales in comparison to what my father did. I've written about 36 letters to friends, family, and companies over the last few months, informing them about what happened to me, seeing if they've got evidence, telling them to contact the police, to make a statement, and so on and so forth. And she was one of them, and I just emailed her, I sent her a hard letter, a regular mail letter, and I probably need to send her another one now, because, my mother told me I should sue my father for $1 million. There's a few reasons why, but they discussed this a lot because I'm an only child, and she hated what he did to us, and she hated his demented plan, his demented demand, and she tried to work around it. He felt that he was entitled to rape her anally because they were married, and she felt like she had to stay with him until she died because of Christian marriage. And she got a lot of support through her friends at church, and I just hope that Christians and family and friends are going to be honest now that I'm coming forward, because she prepared me for this day. She told me about witnesses that my father doesn't even know that I'm supposed to go and contact, and that want to testify. And I have family members that are afraid, that told me decades ago that they'll testify if they have to, but they're very afraid, and they want a subpoena so they can show that they were made to tell the truth, that they didn't just want to come in and say he's a rapist. And it's not just the rape either. Sadly, he's the kind of moron that tracks and harms his victims throughout their life. And his family knows and knew about his weapons. My grandpa passed, my mom passed, but he used them on them, and they warned me and told me about them. In fact, my grandpa told me about this very day, and he knew he would be dead by now, and he was telling me, don't get angry at him, that my father was uncontrollable and did terrible things to his brother, to him, to my mom, to me. And my grandpa couldn't stop him. My grandpa didn't do those things. He didn't tell him to do it. He didn't teach him to do it. He just did it on his own volition. I also set up an appointment with a therapist, and I'm very excited to finally get in and see a therapist here soon. In my opinion, it's not quite soon enough because it's a few weeks away. But so I may even try to find one who's ready to take me sooner. I got 8 names of therapists. 2 sets of 4. The first 4 didn't work out, and then one person in the next set of 4 worked out. So I'm stoked that somebody is available and that it's covered with my insurance and that it'll be local. But I would really like to see somebody immediately, like right now. So I could start working real soon, as soon as this week even. The last time I worked for somebody, I think I was delivering Good News, etc. newspapers about 2 decades ago around the county. It was a monthly Christian publication, and me and my former wife used to deliver them to churches and stuff around the county. It was a pretty good gig, I guess. You know, we listened to Padres games and talked and hung out. Paid okay. So, but since then, you know, I've had an online first aid and CPR certification business for the last 16 years. That was hit pretty hard during COVID times and didn't recover like it should have. Partly because American Red Cross got a billion free ads and they're a competitor, and partly because some random people got PPP loans and went up in the search engines and got some more business, but I didn't. I didn't get PPP loans, and now people don't even have to pay them back. I may switch to nights like I did in Hawaii for a year or 2, and I may just sleep from like 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. or something and stay up all night again. Because these days are kind of discouraging to me, you know? It's just gross out there. There's too much pollution, and now there's a lot of heat, and I really like staying up all night. I'm very independent. I write, think, tweet, exercise, I drink coffee, I do a million things. And I used to be a little bit easier when the 24-hour fitness was indeed 24 hours, but now a lot of them aren't. So that's kind of complicates things a little bit. But there's one that I can go to that is an amazing gym. That's not even in my like level of gym membership, but since I went there before it became a great gym, they grandfathered me in. So I'm allowed to go just with my cheap yearly membership that I pay for. And it is open 24 hours and has sauna, steam room, pool, jacuzzi, a couple floors, you know, the whole 9 yards. It's really amazing, and it's in San Diego, not El Cajon. I'm getting a little bit tired of El Cajon. I like it, it's cool, it's where I grew up, but I only lived here from ages 0 to 17, and then I moved to San Diego State and went to college there for 5 years and graduated. Then I went out of state for graduate school and moved back to San Diego and never back to El Cajon. I wanted to live around the county and check it out, so I lived in Pacific Beach when I returned, and then also lived in Escondido, rented a house. And then I lived in Oceanside, then returned to San Diego. Then I lived in Pasadena for a little while because that's where my former wife's family lived. And they got to see our daughter grow up a little bit. And then we moved back to San Diego and Pacific Beach. And we also rented a house in Rancho Bernardo in there before Pasadena, and that was cool. I taught this girl how to play the guitar. For about 10 years, I taught music lessons in San Diego, and for the first 5, I went all around the county and taught kids, and then the next 5, they came to me. And one of my students happened to live in a really nice house in Rancho Bernardo, and they wanted to rent it or sell it, and they were gonna move to an even nicer house in Escondido, which they did. And we had an electric lawnmower. I like that a lot. That was cool. And that was about 15 years ago, I'd say, give or take, maybe a little bit longer. And it was a very nice house. It was good. So those are the main places I've lived, except for, 2012 through 14, I was Long Beach, and then Hawaii, almost exclusively for the next, until 2022. Then I had to return and deal with some things. Then I went back, Yeah, I spent 4 months in Miami living. So yeah, El Cajon is bigger. Over 100,000 people here now. There's no more Blue Meanie Records. The Leaning Tower of Pizza is still the yogurt mill, and I'm sure it's still owned by Christian conservative fundamentalists who like sucking down that yogurt after church. But yeah, I grew up on Mollison in an apartment there. And I was born in Grossmont Hospital, and I lived on Mollison until I was about 7, and then we had a house on Fairglen Road by where Chase and Hamishaw meet, which is kind of more the county and the sheriff's jurisdiction. So I've actually had to report crimes to the sheriff and to the police that my father committed because we lived in 2 locations with 2 different jurisdictions. So, and one thing I was going to mention is just how I feel discriminated against when I wear my University of Hawaii shirt with a rainbow on it. Because I went to the University of Hawaii for the last 2 years, and it was kind of my reintroduction to education because I took about a decade off of school, and I wrote books across the Hawaiian Islands, mainly poetry books, but also short stories, books of fiction stories. And so I didn't go to school from 2014 to 2024, roughly. Yeah. And so I really like getting back into it, and I took online classes, even though I lived there in Hilo, at UH Hilo. I went there for a year, and then I went to UH Manoa for a year, and returned to here. And now I'm just about to apply to ASU because I want to earn a master's in education. I want to earn a master's in secondary and post-secondary education and be a teacher again. I also want to get a 30-day emergency teaching credential in San Diego and substitute teach around the county like I used to after the summer ends, so that should be exciting. Yeah, I just have teaching in my blood. It feels like second nature. It's a lot of fun. But about my rainbow shirt, I feel like people either generally think I'm gay if they see the rainbow shirt, and I think that happened at a Starbucks, and I got some weird looks, and man, it's frustrating. I've never been gay. I'm just a heterosexual man. I don't want to be gay. I'm not attracted to men. I like men. I like women. I like gay people. I don't care at all what you want to do with your sex or in your bedroom. It's your personal business, and it's not mine. But I was recognizing how when I just zip my shirt down a little bit, you can see the rainbow, but not necessarily the University of Hawaii or UH Rainbow Warriors. So, and lesbians, a lot of lesbians don't like gay people. Let's just say it. And so, and there's some kind of friction or complication there too when somebody thinks you're a gay person and thinks that you think that they're a lesbian, and then they think you don't like them. And it's just a whole load of shit. I love lesbians. I love gay people. They're free to not like each other if they don't want to. I don't care. But I'm a straight man that likes everybody, for Christ's sake. I also don't care what your skin color is, you know. I'm a coach. I'm a certified soccer coach. I have a D and an E license. And I think athletes deeply don't care about racism because they want the best team out there. And if you're racist, you're not going to put the best team out there. And your team's probably not going to like you or listen to you or follow you that much. It's just, I'm in Southern California now, and it's such a diverse place, quite like Hawaii as well. Although, you know, in Oahu, I was a minority. I was friends with some black people there, and we were literally minorities. It was a strange feeling because it's like over 80 or 90% Asian there. I don't think they do a very good job of counting the tourists, but I think that because there's just so many, there's waves of them, and some of them stay there for a long time. But there's over 500,000 people living there, and probably over 500,000 tourists at all times, I would imagine. And so yeah, just imagine that. And I was told as a child that I would grow up and be in the minority in Southern California because my father saw, how the immigration issues going on and how the Mexican people were coming over and doing jobs. But I also learned that they were doing jobs that we did not want to do and wouldn't do. My friends didn't want to pick avocados or do yard work. And I don't want to say that that's all they do, or because it's not, and it's us, it's not they. This is America, we're all Americans. It's really sad that we've got two political parties that fight and try to divide us by skin color and race and all these other stupid things. Because we're all on the same team. It's one law. I don't understand why there are a billion different ways to enforce one law. We should all be on the same side, the same team. In a democracy, we could even vote on it, on how we want these laws enforced, but we don't. And they just want to fight and argue, and then you got the Trump MAGA crowd, pounding their chest, throwing people in prison, doing and then you got the liberals crying foul, and we got the No Kings March, No Kings protest the other day. I had never seen so many people in the trolley. I took a picture, it's on my Instagram, of one of the signs. But yeah, I support your right to protest anything you want to protest. And they could be a lot nicer. It's kind of like they're trying to be mean, going over the top. But I get it though. If people are here illegally. And then you have people like Erin Burnett on CNN saying these people have committed no crimes. And I think she forgets that being in the country illegally is a crime. I've been to other countries. I've been to Israel and Greece, and I've been to England, Ireland, Mexico. And I can't just show up in some other country and just decide to stay forever and not talk to anybody about it, not fill any paperwork, not give a crap, just move in and just stay there forever, because that's just not how it works. I have a passport, but nonetheless, and I've looked into it, and in Canada as well, if they even let you in there. In places like China, they want you to check in with the government after you get there. And presumably they keep some sort of tabs on you. So, America's a great country for a lot of reasons, but it doesn't have to be great by letting people break the law. There can be laws that we can all agree on. And I learned a long time ago that the path to citizenship in the US is protected and super difficult. Because just look at the DACA folks, the kids, the young kids that have issues, that aren't citizens, that were taken here when they were little. We have the birthright citizenship, so if you're born here, you're an American, and they're talking about taking that away, which is kind of a whole nother ball of wax. But I wonder how bad that's being abused, because I see that it sounds like some people in other countries are running sort of scams or businesses to just get pregnant people over here for birthright citizenship. But I don't know, the government is doing such strange things now, and they act like the federal government has the secret information that pertains to why they should be doing these things, and they're not telling us. At least that's how I feel. It's kind of like, well, the state governments don't know the truth about these people and our immigration situation and this and that, but trust us, we do. So I don't trust anybody, but I do keep my eyes open, and I watch the news, and I know a couple things. And number one, I know they want to keep the supply lines open if there's a war with China. I know they want to manufacture things at home instead of be out of them if there's a war with China, presumably over Taiwan, which is very, very stupid. I respect whatever you feel about Taiwan, but I think it belongs to China. And my rationale is that it's so stinking close to China, and it was China's. And sort of like Crimea, Russia laid the framework there, the infrastructure, and never left the place. And then 95% of them voted to be part of the Russian Federation. I understand we've got a generational gap, and some of the older people or younger people have different issues and ideas. But I also understand that the U.S. broadcasts a lot of propaganda and tries to influence kids and people and countries that they think they can influence for their own political agenda. And to try to take China down a notch is definitely one of them. We want to sell Taiwan weapons, the Pentagon does. If it could be called, renamed Gun Island, I'm sure they would do that. And make sure everybody's got 6 pistols like they do in the United States. But be that as it may, I think we could all cooperate. You know, I don't really respect Cuba's sovereignty either, since Cuba is so close to the U.S. But I also don't like how the U.S. treats them, you know. I think that some things the government thought would be too difficult to tell the truth and to pursue an honest path, and they just said, well, you can't stop us, and we're gonna kneecap Cuba, keep them under our thumb forever because they're so close to us. But in reality, we should probably, and also that helps their argument against Taiwan and China if they play that card. Because in reality, I think that when international waters and territorial waters were decided upon, we didn't have weapons like we have today. We didn't have conflicts like we have today, and destruction. And we don't even know what they have, you know. Whatever technology you know about, the government's got decades ahead of us, technology. So I've been to Miami, I've been to, what's it called? Fort Lauderdale, but I've been to Key West, and there's signs there saying how close Cuba is, and it's very close. So I think it encroaches on American sovereignty, having another country that close to us, and we should be friends with them, or it should be part of the U.S. And we shouldn't just try to torture them and make them a third world country because they're so close and they don't like us. And there's probably a correlation between them not liking us and the treatment that the country has given them. PETA hates the saying, but there is more than one way to skin a cat. I'm a vegetarian, so maybe I can say that. And I've seen some animals here in El Cajon. I just saw a squirrel today. Yeah, like right up close, and then it jumped up this tree in front of me. And I saw a possum the other day, and I saw a rabbit, which is probably good, you know. If I'm seeing these animals like that, it means they're probably not using super bad pesticides. That's at least what I'm thinking. And I hate cockroaches, but I even saw a cockroach or two somewhere. Ugh. Vile little things. But yeah, I mean, if I had to choose between, like, you know, Monsanto chemicals or Roundup or whatever it is, everywhere, or a couple of critters, I think I would just take a couple of critters. Because I think that stuff, you know, gets inside your body and harms you. I'm an organic vegetarian, so I don't eat it if it's not organic and vegetarian. And I mean like USDA certified organic, not just like, you know, a wink wink from a farmer's market. Yeah, we grew this right. And I can't bring my polygraph to a farmer's market. But I talked to one of the guys at Sprouts yesterday, actually a couple of them, because I was looking for something crunchy I could eat organic spicy guacamole with. Yeah, I should have just eaten the seed bread that I bought from Walmart earlier in the day. Like I had finished it up with today, that would have been probably fine. But I was really hoping I could find something there to eat. And I don't eat things if there's 1 gram of protein, 1 gram of fiber per serving. That's below my standards. So there's gotta be at least a couple, or just forget it. I don't eat white flour, I don't eat white processed sugar. And I hope I say that way. I don't need that junk, you know, it's real simple energy, it's cheap, it's not good for you. It's like eating a Snickers bar or something, you know. There's a lot of great food that's organic, and it used to all be organic, and I like to cook, and I like to prepare my own food, and it's delicious too. I don't know. Animals aren't food. Say that again. Animals aren't food. That might be a new thing to you. You want to try something else uncomfortable and new? I love me. I love me. I love me. Try that. Try saying you love yourself. Because I don't think you do. I don't think people really love themselves. Remember way back when the Jabez prayer book came out, I was attending Shadow Mountain Community Church every week, where I went to high school as well. And he came and prayed at our church, Bruce Wilkinson, and he said, he got up in front of everybody and said, Lord, bless me, increase my ministry, lay your hand on me and keep me from evil. And he just talked about how his prayer seemingly seemed selfish, but actually how that was sort of the missing gem in the Christian church, is that everybody is always so outward, you know? They've got missions they're praying for, and they're praying for the homeless and their family to get saved, and that, you know, that they'll maybe get a good grade on something or won't get into a car accident, but they don't start with loving themselves and praying for themselves. And that's vitally important. I don't identify as a Christian anymore. I identify as a deist. But back when I was a Christian, I prayed for the intangible things and I got them. I prayed for the fruits of the Spirit: joy, love, peace, patience, wisdom, discernment, all of those things for years. I journaled them alone, went to the beach alone, and with other people, led Bible studies and went to Bible studies, led worship on my guitar. I mean, I believed. I got saved when I was 7, and but that leads me to something else. Last thing on my list here. See, I was told that Christianity was going to be a journey toward a process while trying to find the truth. Yeah. At least that's how my father described it to me when I got saved. And I now looking back, I think there are some other reasons that I was pressured to get saved at that moment in time when I was 7 years old, but more on that later. That had more to do with my father and his crimes than me. And them starting to find out and wanting to send a different message to my Bostonia Christian Elementary School that was somehow sucked into Shadow Mountain Community Church now, and it's part of them. And then I went to Christian Junior High, which is now somehow also a part of Shadow Mountain. And then I went to Christian High School, which was always, you know, on the campus there of Shadow Mountain, so that actually made some sense. But be that as it may, I was taught that the Bible was probably true, Christianity was probably true, that there were people that knew a lot more than me, but this is a journey and a path towards truth. And the only way I was going to figure out if it was true or not was to believe and to learn and to test it and see. And I was told that I would be not, I don't know if glorified or praised are the words, but I'd be highly respected if I studied Christianity, studied the Bible, earned degrees, and then decades later came to the conclusion that it was wrong. And that's exactly what I did. And there's no respect whatsoever. None whatsoever. That was a complete and total lie from my father. One of millions, probably. But yeah, so, but I don't care. It was still my process and still the truth in my life. I don't care what people think about me. I was trying to find the truth, and I did find it. And like I was saying before, I went back to Virginia for graduate school after SDSU. I went to Liberty Baptist Theological Seminary, where Dr. Jerry Falwell was. I went to Thomas Road Baptist Church, sat in the hardwood pews and listened to Jerry. And then I was there for a year. I came back to San Diego, and then I ended up finishing my master's and PhD in biblical studies at Louisiana Baptist University through correspondence courses. And I aced them all because I was really interested in the subject matter. And I knew at the time, because that school was unaccredited, that it wouldn't open up a lot of doors for me. but I was running a Christian ministry at the time. And so it was really just for enrichment, you know. I just wanted to know the truth and study the Bible, and I was sending out a weekly devotional message with scriptures in it to a big mailing list online. And it just enriched my life and that process. So yeah, I gave it, after right about 3 decades, you know, about 37 years old was when I realized it didn't work. And I realized it was, and it wasn't just my expression of Christianity as an American and my former wife's as an immigrant, although that had a little bit to do with our misunderstanding, because we kind of had a different tradition. And I think it had more to do with my father being a fake Christian and a terrible spiritual leader, because my mom was the Christian leader in my house. And according to the scriptures and pastors and things, that they think it is supposed to be the male that does that. And my dad was just a liar and trying to deceive people and get away with rape and assaults as long as he possibly could. So everything he ever did, said, wanted me to do, let me do, watched me do, thought about letting me do it, all was within the lens of him getting away with crimes. Not only when I was a kid, not only when I turned 50 and the brainwashing ended, but for the entirety of his life, he hopes. So, to make a long story longer, I'm really excited about my process and my faith and what happened to me. I met with an old Christian friend a couple days ago, and I could see the look on his face that he's not excited. He's not respecting the process. He's concerned about my salvation and wondering if I was really saved, and thinking, and there's different people that when this happens that think, oh yeah, they're still saved, they're always saved, once saved, always saved. And then there's people that think, oh no, they were never saved to begin with, kind of thing. And I don't have any words for anybody. It was a personal process, a personal relationship. And if I read the Bible now, I don't see Jesus saying, I'm God. I don't see Jesus saying, I'm Christ. I don't think there's enough evidence for the resurrection. What I used to say, and I think now was a bad judgment, I used to say there was enough evidence in the Bible of verifiable facts that I should take the unverifiable things on faith. But that's an unwise way to be, and I don't anymore, because it's just not practical. It's not right. It's not good. So does that mean the whole entire Bible should just be flushed down the toilet? I don't know. Maybe. There's something called the Jefferson Bible that I think is interesting, because Jefferson realized that he wasn't going to be able to evangelize the American Indians, the Native Americans, because they didn't believe it. And there may have something to do, there may be something else horrifying that I don't want to get into right now that had a part in all this. But I tend to think that, you know, I like provable things. I don't want to believe anything. I would never ever ask anybody to believe anything. I think belief can be a crutch, can be a negative, could be a big giant disaster. So believe in yourself if you want to believe something or in somebody. But there's no good reason to believe anything ancient. And as far as the Gospels are concerned, you know, it's funny, I had debunked the C.S. Lewis trichotomy a long time ago, and my friend approached me with that the other day and said, well, you know, it's got to be, Jesus has to be either a liar, a lunatic, or the Lord. And I go, well, you know, I think there's a fourth one, and that's the people that wrote Jesus' words down lied about what he said, because Jesus didn't write anything, or he did and it was destroyed or hidden, stolen, it's gone. Nobody knows what Jesus really said. And Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were not contemporaries. Like, they didn't write their stuff down during Jesus' life and publish it at that time. It was all much, much, much later. And those names, people don't even know who those people are for sure. There's no evidence that they actually even wrote those books. So I think that there is fraud at the canonization meetings. I don't think that Jesus said those things. You know, they sound after, you know, my father glorified houselessness a lot. So I tried it for about 8 years or so. From 2012 until 2022, at the end of 2021, the very end of 2021 or 2022, I don't know, I tried it for a bunch of years. And the Bible sounds a lot like how somebody would think a homeless person should speak and act, but not at all like one really would speak and behave. Very fanciful, very nutty. And you know, it's after taking journalism classes, I wish the Bible would be more journalistic, you know? And I say it reads like a college freshman persuasive speech. And I took speech my freshman year in college. And, you know, the truth speaks for itself. And people that say, you know, believe me, and try to make you believe something have a problem. You know, pick up a newspaper. There's nothing begging you to believe a story in the news. It just tells you the facts. And I would have had a lot more respect for the Gospels if it would have just laid out the facts without like a pitch to make you try to believe, and without, you know, trying to create a need in you for what this book and this particular God offers. I think Christianity is a cult of Judaism. And it was interesting that my friend is part Jewish, and he brought up how the Jews hate Jesus. And I've read that, like in the Talmud and stuff, there's some real nasty things about Jesus. Now I'm talking about the Jews that practice Judaism, not just like all Jews or whatever, but like the religion of Judaism does not respect Jesus at all. And probably because he claimed he was, you know, probably because he broke away from Judaism and created even though he created a vehicle for Zionism, which benefits Jews and Judaism a lot, which who knows if or when that was their intent or whose intent that was, but that is the end result. Is we have Christians making bad judgments because they're first Christians and Zionists that think that their responsibility is to protect the country of Israel and whoever's running it, whoever's living there, and that they can't do any wrong, or God understands or God leads them. And I'm not quite sure exactly, you know, how Zionists justify everything now. I kind of remember how I did, and that's basically how I did. And saying that their neighbors hated them or they're dead and things like that. But you know, I married a woman that is an Arab, and that her father was born in Palestine, and he had no citizenship. And they moved to Lebanon, and my wife was born with no citizenship. Since they're in Lebanon, you get your father's citizenship, whatever it is, and he had none. So she had no citizenship until they moved to the U.S. after she turned 2 years old. And her mom is Lebanese and Armenian. And so he told me a lot of things. And he's, I guess, a pastor named John Mark converted them from Islam and brought them to America. And he was a pastor's assistant in Pasadena with them or something. So on one hand, it was just a way out of there. But on the other hand, too, it illustrated a change and a willingness to be different and to fit in here. Although here now, this was in the 1980s, early 80s. Now, you know, other religions are much more accepted here. At least I accept them all, that's for sure. And also people from all over the world are here now more so than ever. And America's got freedom. You can be who you want, worship how you want, sleep with who you want, marry who you want. It's, you know, you don't have to do it, but other people can if they want. So I don't know. I've come to the conclusion lately that God doesn't need religion. And I think that's important, you know. Just think about it. And I've come to the conclusion that maybe love isn't God's thing, you know? Maybe a personal relationship isn't God's thing. And my mom told me that my dad has a machine that he puts words into her head from the other room, and that he used to do it and talk to her. And my other relatives confirmed his weapons as well. He says they use them on AWOL soldiers, and it's a military-grade weapon that he got from my uncle Ross Gastrich, who was in the United States Air Force. That one of his buddies or somebody got it, and she saw the box and the machine. And this is just one of his weapons. There's other ones. And so what better way would there be for God to be God than to decide long ago that there's not going to be any words? God's not saying anything. I like that. I like that concept, you know? Because I've had the dumb words placed in me as well, and I don't need them.
How are you gonna do that?
And they're not God. They wish they were God. They want to be God, but they're not. And I remember my father saying, you know, wait until you see what happens if churches get this technology. And what if like sleeper cells and stuff like that are brainwashed like I was brainwashed? You know, there's a lot of what ifs and whataboutisms.
Yeah.
But I respect God even more than before for being silent. You know, people know what they need to do. The only reason why they don't know what they need to do is if they listen to idiots. You know? Killing people, harming people, wanting people, you know, doing bad things to people is wrong. You know, treating your body well is right. You know, I mean, I haven't really articulated a million self-evident things because they're so self-evident, but I'm sure that I could create a very, very long list of things that are difficult to deny without a God, without a Bible, without a religion. And so God doesn't need religion. And look at how many religions there are. And look how people end up just being the whatever religion is the dominant one in their society. And who am I to say Jesus wasn't a prophet or Muhammad or Joseph Smith? They're quite possibly all prophets. And none of them are God, or none of them did miracles per se. You know, maybe they're just human beings that helped people change and live a better life and remember what's important. And the vehicle that they used was religion. You know, I think we're going to see that a lot across the world, and it's been happening. Is that people have used the vehicle of religion to live and to learn and to thrive. That's the lens. And is it good or is it healthy? I don't know. Maybe not. And it's kind of like a loaded gun. Religion makes some people better and healthier and makes some people worse. And so if that's the case, then maybe it's all bad. But I'm really thankful that I'm learning the truth, and it's not obscured by dogma or religion or preconceived notions or assumptions, because the truth is the most important thing to me. Lies make people dumber, you know. And I'm going to transcend and buck all the assumptions that Christians make about unbelievers, because, you know, I'm not a wicked person. I haven't done bad things to people. You know, I haven't stolen stuff. Most people steal and do drugs when they're homeless, I heard. But back when I tried it, I didn't do any of those things at all. You know, I had a job and I showered every day and treat people with respect unless they polluted all over us, and then sometimes I screamed and yelled at them. So I fought for people that needed stuff, and I gave people whatever I had and whatever they needed. And so, you know, there's different ways to live, and you know, sometimes if you choose a parachurch type ministry, some of these people become very strange people. You know, when you're bent on like counter cult ministry or ministry to gays or something like that, and that's all you ever do, you know, it really changes you. It makes you a strange person. And It's just a shame that people assume that there's so much truth to their religion when their religion deeply matters so very, very little. You know?
Yeah, you're
And I'm not an atheist, and I've never been an atheist, but I respect atheists until they say that they know there's no God, or they can prove there's no God, because I don't think that's possible. I think you would have to have all the information in the universe to be able to conclude that there's no God. And I don't have it, and I don't think anybody has it. And because God could be anywhere, God could be doing anything, and God doesn't have to do anything that we think God should do. And please note how I have not used one pronoun for God in this entire hour. God doesn't need a pronoun. God is God. God's not a woman. God's not a man. God doesn't have genitalia. It's very offensive to put a pronoun on God. And I wish religious people would see that. And maybe God will have mercy on them, and maybe God won't. I don't know. But you have to think about it. Well, imagine if there's a God and you've been calling God by some weird name your whole life. What is God going to say to you? What is God going to think? Well, I mean, that's on you. But anyways, I appreciate the chance to talk at ya for an hour. I didn't think I would be a podcaster again. I actually offered some time to a couple of people I know here, saying, hey, do you want to hop on and say a few words? You can if you got something to say. And I remember that I first podcasted long time ago. I was one of the pioneers, I guess, because I used Winamp and Shoutcast decades ago to podcast live. And podcast is really just a fancy name for a file. That's all it is. You know, there's a live podcast, and then there's non-live or recorded, and it's all, you know, it's a file. So this podcast, number 7, will be uploaded, the file, and it will be in my records, and you'll have it forever. I did another series like this, in case you're interested, and it's on my old account, the Jason Gastrich account, although I'm changing my name. It's on YouTube from Kauai during COVID times. I was there holed up in a condo for a few months with a 9 p.m. curfew and recorded a series of videos. So check them out if you're interested. I'm changing my name to Jason Patrick Law. I don't want to use this name anymore, ever. And my mother's passed away on the first day of summer, which is in less than a week. And I'm excited to just be a different name now, because I don't want to be known as Gastrich. That name is not me. It's nonsensical. I think I explained it last time, how my family just picked it basically when they immigrated here from Germany in the early 1900s, and then pronounced it wrong and changed the spelling several times right when they came over, as if they were running away from somebody. But yeah, today I reserved email accounts, so you can't have them. I am now Jason Patrick Law at Yahoo, Jason Patrick Law at Gmail, Jason Patrick Law at Reddit, at Tumblr, at Flickr, at Imager, at X, at YouTube, at Blogger, at All Poetry, and so on and so forth, because I'm done. I am done. So I look forward to seeing you next week. Next week will be the 8th podcast. Might be a good place to stop, but I'm happy to continue. It's really no skin off my nose. I like talking and sharing the truth. And hey, my teeth might even look better. We shall see. Thank you. I hope you have a nice day. Take care of yourself, and good luck.